Avengers Endgame is just around the corner, and we're all waiting with bated breath to discover which of the MCU's heroes is going to shine in the fight back against Thanos. But could we be completely surprised in the epic Marvel Studios offering? Could it be that the past villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are actually going to be the wildcards when it comes to undoing the actions of the Mad Titan? That's what this theory suggests, so let's get into it. So, you've probably been envisioning the likes of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, the Hulk, and a slew of other MCU heroes landing that decisive blow on Thanos, or making that all-important sacrifice to save the universe in Avengers Endgame. And you may well be right, but we have another potential idea. There have been rumors and theories about past MCU villains reappearing in the franchise for some time, but most of them involve Thanos resurrecting them, or recruiting them to fight alongside him. This particular theory has other ideas, however, and it's a pretty exciting one. Could it be that in a collective effort to ensure everyone in the universe survives, the heroes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe travel back in time to ask the villains of the franchise to ally with them, perhaps showing them the future to provide to them that the path they were on ultimately led to their defeat or death? Some evidence seems to suggest that's the case.
How about that?
Take the early set photos from Avengers Endgame, for example. The Avengers, including Ant-Man, who wasn't there first time around, could be seen in the middle of the Battle of New York. The important thing to note about this is that both the Mind Stone and Space Stone, or the Scepter and the Tesseract if you prefer, were in the possession of Loki and his forces at that point. Surely, if the Avengers wanted to simply obtain those two Infinity Stones, they would have traveled to a point after the battle was won, when they had both of the stones in their possession. We see Black Widow holding the Scepter in the aftermath of the battle, and Thor was seen taking the Tesseract back to Asgard with him in the movie's final scenes. Why not just go back and explain to those characters that the fate of the universe depended on them handing over the items to their future selves? Well, the answer could lie in the fact that the Chitauri were dead by that point. If the Avengers get to Loki in the middle of the battle, when the Chitauri were very much still alive, they could attempt to get Loki on their side, and have him instruct his alien army to join them, knowing that the fate of the universe was at stake. Let's be honest, it's very unlikely that anyone who ever worked for Thanos was particularly fond of the guy. So if the Chitauri were told that Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk were prepared to protect them from him, while ensuring their future survival by preventing the decimation, they may be tempted to go along with it. Then, with the Mind Stone and the Tesseract in their possession, they could create more powerful weapons going forward, to use in preventing Thanos from ever getting the Infinity Stones. Or see it as a case of 2 down, 4 to go if they wanted to use all 6 to undo the snap by taking their versions of the Infinity Stones into the future. They would also have the 2 key pieces in place to create Vision and Ultron earlier in the MCU timeline than they otherwise ended up being created. With the knowledge they accrued in Avengers Age of Ultron, they might even be able to get Ultron right this time and not create a genocidal murder bot.
I understood that reference.
There was also another piece of evidence that backs up this theory in the recent Avengers Endgame Super Bowl trailer. In that 30-second teaser, we saw Clint Barton looking up at something that was glowing with a bright red energy. Now, the one thing in the MCU that we know glows red is the Reality Stone, or the Ether if you prefer. This would further suggest that the Avengers were tasked with traveling through time to collect the Infinity Stones, with Barton's mission being to collect the Reality Stone, so you'd think he'd be pleased to be within reach of it. However, he doesn't look pleased at all. He looks concerned, as if something is posing a threat to him. So could it be that Malekith is there? If that's the case, maybe part of Barton's mission was to convince the Dark Elf and his forces to join the fight back against Thanos for the sake of the universe. Again, they would have a common enemy in the Mad Titan, whose actions would wipe out half of all living beings, good or evil, in Avengers Infinity War. If the heroes had no interest in recruiting Malekith, why didn't they just travel to a point in time when obtaining the Ether would be easier, such as when it was hidden away for thousands of years in the location where Jane Foster found it, or even when it had infected Jane Foster, or better still, when Sif and Volstagg had it in their possession en route to handing it over to the Collector, another character who could be convinced to join the heroes in the fight back against Thanos incidentally. In the event that this theory does turn out to be true, and the villains of the MCU past do get recruited to help in the fight against Thanos, it makes us wonder which others might be asked to join in the epic battle to save the universe. As a starting point, let's look at which other villains have possessed Infinity Stones in the MCU. We've already mentioned Ultron, and an army of powerful robots would certainly be useful, but the first to utilize one was Hydra's leader, the Red Skull, back in Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, interestingly, in Infinity War, the Red Skull was revealed to have been transported to Vormir by the Space Stone in order to become the guardian of the Soul Stone. Nebula, who is still alive after Infinity War, is currently with Tony Stark and is one of the few characters in the universe who knows all about the Soul Stone's location. With that in mind, the heroes of the MCU could travel back in time to get there before Thanos and ask the Red Skull for his assistance. Given that they might not want to sacrifice anyone to obtain it, they could simply tell the Red Skull to lie to Thanos to sabotage his attempts to get his hands on it. Of course, given the heroic nature of, well, superheroes, somebody may be prepared to trade their life for it. But tricking Thanos seems like a better option. For example, they could make a deal with the Red Skull to tell Thanos he has to kill himself to obtain the stone, and he'll then be brought back to life by it, which of course would actually result in him being gone for good. Then we come to Ronan, the only other major MCU antagonist to have wielded an Infinity Stone. In this case, the Power Stone in Guardians of the Galaxy, which was otherwise known as the Orb. Although this year's Captain Marvel movie may well end up sending the Kree character on his villainous path, we could also see a different side to him as a member of Star Force in the movie, a side that may show he has it in him to potentially help the heroes of the MCU in the fight against Thanos. In fact, it may well be specifically setting him up for that role. Therefore, they may go back in time to recruit Ronan when he had possession of the Power Stone, then appeal to the goodness in him in order to recruit him to their cause. So, who else could be recruited, villain-wise, from the MCU past, if this does turn out to be the case? Well, we've never seen a bad guy other than Thanos wielding the Time Stone, aka the Eye of Agamotto, but we do know some who are familiar with it. The likes of Karl Mordo and Caecilius have spent enough time in the vicinity of it to know how it works, and the MCU's heroes could sure use some additional mystic oomph when it comes to the fight back against the Mad Titan. Of course, Caecilius is another character they'd need to travel back in time to recruit, given his fate in the Doctor Strange movie. But what if we go further back? What if the cosmic entities who created the Infinity Stones are actively recruited by the MCU heroes to prevent them from being misused by the Mad Titan? The fact that an explanation of the stone's origins was given in Guardians of the Galaxy would suggest their creators are important in the MCU. So maybe we'll get to see those creators on screen. The cosmic entities may not be completely malevolent by default, but they can certainly be ruthless and unforgiving if Marvel's comic books are anything to go by, especially death. And having the heroes of the MCU go back in time to the dawn of the universe to converse with them about Thanos' plans would be totally awe-inspiring to see on the big screen. How realistic that particular possibility is open to debate, but it's undoubtedly a mouth-watering prospect. The same goes for other powerful beings who have wielded the Infinity Stones. Take Aeson the Searcher, for example. He was shown using the Power Stone destroying planets in Guardians of the Galaxy. Could even he be contacted to aid in the fight back against Thanos? In truth, the potential bad guys who could aid the MCU's heroes in Avengers Endgame extends to all of them. What better way to defeat the most powerful being in the universe, a villain who's essentially God, than by uniting every other being, good and evil, against him? Of course, there are several legitimate counter-arguments to this theory, the first being the fact that bringing defeated villains back into the fold could potentially create unnecessary threats going forward. For instance, once the universe is saved, what would stop Ronan from wanting to get his hands on the Power Stone again and attempting to destroy Xandar? What would stop Malekith from attempting to use the Reality Stone to plunge the universe into darkness again? And on a smaller scale, what would prevent the likes of Aldrich Killian or Killmonger from causing a nuisance to the likes of Iron Man and Black Panther again? Would the heroes really risk that happening? We're not so sure. But there's also the simple fact that having to convince villains to join their cause creates an additional hurdle for the heroes, when their task is already difficult and emotional enough.
Yeah.
Can you really see Rocket wanting to bother convincing Ronan to join his side when he's in a rush to bring Groot back? Will Hawkeye really want to waste time persuading Loki to fight alongside him when his family's lives are at stake? And would Captain America really think it was worth taking the time to make peace with the Red Skull when he's been fighting to bring his two best friends into the world back? In truth, it's hard to imagine. But perhaps most importantly, we haven't seen any of the actors who previously played these villains on the set of Avengers Endgame. Granted, this is one of the most secretive projects in movie movie history. But can you really see Marvel Studios managing to keep appearances the likes of Christopher Eccleston, Lee Pace, James Spader, and Michael B. Jordan completely hidden from the public? Again, it's difficult to imagine it being possible. All things considered, this is a really intriguing theory, and we would love to see the return of at least some MCU villains in Avengers Endgame, but it's one of the more audacious and unrealistic theories out there, and that's sadly just a fact. Avengers Endgame hits theaters around the world at the end of April, and one way or another, Thanos is going to get his butt handed to him, whether that's by the heroes of the MCU or the heroes and villains of the MCU working together, and we simply cannot wait for it. What do you think of this theory? Could the villains of the MCU past be recruited to help in the fight back against Thanos? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos just like this one. Or we will bathe the Starways in your blood. We won't really do that. See you later.